Yeah.
Can I add in some extra beats there?
That'd actually be amazing if we did that one week. Just no music, straight up freestyle.
No.
Yeah,
no, that's what we're doing. That's
Josh and I
100% what we're
just
doing.
had to watch the Dota 2 personalities do freestyle rap battles.
That was really, really frustrating.
Sounds amazing.
Nahaz, though, he could be your daddy and he can rap. So.
He made fun of a man's penis.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really
Wait,
cringy.
can we say that on this podcast?
Oh, we just did.
Okay.
No cursing, guys. No 4-letter words. You know the fucking
No
deal.
liquor.
Okay, all of those rules were broken immediately.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
So, Josh, are we live?
we should be.
Cool.
Sweet.
All right, Colin, you want to do the official lead in?
We're definitely live.
Okay, I will right after I tweet that we're live.
Ooh, got the social media game.
So, guys, welcome to theScore eSports podcast. With me, as always, is Kyle Chatterson.
Yo.
And today we've got Josh Burry.
Hello.
Welcome, Josh.
You may know him from theScore's League of Legends specific podcast, The Nexus. I am, of course, Colin McNeil, your host, as always. Today on the show, well, let me first say, Kyle and Josh, that it is spring here in beautiful Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And when spring comes, you know, April showers, May flowers, flowers bloom, okay? And we've got our own Bloom joining us in just a few moments. Anders Blume, that is CSGO caster extraordinaire, one of the premier personalities and voices in that esports scene. Really excited to have him on.
What's it called when you cringe for like 30 seconds straight?
That is called a Uber
That's a
cringe.
McNeil.
Okay. that's what I just did.
That is my name.
Perfect.
That is my name. Although apparently I'm Josh today, as I can see from the stream.
I
Camera
fixed
angle's
it.
a little off.
I fixed
Okay.
it.
All right, we're good.
So how was your weekend, boys?
It was good. Nice to be back after the hiatus. We had a little bit of break. I had
That's
a
right,
bit
we
longer
did-
break
did
because
not record a podcast last week, yeah.
So we're back in. On that note, I mean, I'd love to start hearing from some of our listeners. Hit us up on like theScore eSports or any of our Twitters. Let us know what you guys think, what you want to talk about, questions you want us to ask, all that kind of stuff.
Funny you
Get at
say
us.
that because somebody just did a few
saw.
moments ago,
Yeah.
and they expressed joy at my hockey references, my constant ice hockey references.
Wow.
So I'm just
It's like the only person you found each other. It's
Yeah,
like a
that's good.
misconnection.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're gonna be reading about this on like Craigslist.
Matthews, Connor McDavid. I'm just gonna throw them out there.
No, it's good.
No.
We're okay though.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I
Okay.
mean, name vomit is something, but yeah, great.
Yeah, some pretty good esports on the weekend. It was a little slow. I don't know if you guys caught the thing PGL did, the 2v2 tournament. That was interesting. Format, I don't know how crazy I am about it. It was really weird. It was really jokey and like chill. Did you hear Space Soldiers, how far they went? That was incredible.
But Les Français won, right? The 2v2?
I believe they
It was
did.
G2, right?
I believe
it was
so.
100% G2.
I believe so. I gotta be honest, I kind of tuned out when Space Soldiers didn't make the grand finals. I was like, oh, well, the storyline's over now. Then I went over to the Subaru Invitational. That grand finals was a shit show in the best possible way. SK and C9 pulling out some crazy stuff, like some weird 4 spies with like 3 scouts and just wackiness, and SK winning some eco rounds they had no business winning. Really fun tournament.
Well, why don't we get...
Yeah, I want to dive into some of the Overwatch
I-
stuff that we've been talking about, and I know I want Anders' opinion on that.
Why
So
don't we get
Hold on,
Anders
I
in
want
on
to ask
this?
about CS first.
no, you can. That's fine. I'm patient. I'm a patient man.
all right.
Listen,
But I'm still going to get to it.
I'm the one on the board, so I've decided that Anders is coming into this podcast, whether
Bring
you
him in.
like it or not.
Bring him in.
Anders, welcome to the Score Esports podcast, and I don't know why those lower thirds are on there. Apologies.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you, Anders. We had your boy Semmler on a couple weeks ago, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I saw that. I saw it. Well, I don't remember much of it, but I did see it.
Oh, you were drinking while you were watching the podcast, eh? Very good.
Yeah.
I mean,
Very good.
we try to do that during, so I mean, no judgment here.
Yeah, the camera angles are very specifically designed to not show any of that while we're live.
So as we broadcast right now, it's a little past 1 p.m. EST time. What's it like over where you are, Anders? Is it like 1 a.m. or something?
It's like
You think he's in
time zones
Asia?
Confuse me as well. I wish they didn't exist, but it's a little past 7 here in the
okay.
evening. So that's pretty good. It means I didn't have to put my kid to bed instead. That was my wife's job. So it's pretty good timing for me, actually.
Oh, excellent! I'm glad we.
How has
that
esports mixed with having a child? We're starting to see more personalities, more people playing the games, have a family life. Has it been able to work so far?
It has, but I mean, I think it requires a little sacrifice from everyone involved. Like, obviously, like immediate family, but even like extended family. It's usually a job that requires a lot of travel, right? So, you're going to need help from people around you to really make it work. But I think it's a good thing that people are doing it, because even 4 or 5 years ago, I remember sort of people would say, well, if you want to work in esports, you can't really do anything else. Like, that's it. You have to even travel. You have to relocate your whole life somewhere else. You got to travel to Korea. You got to, if there's a studio in Berlin, then you're in Berlin. You're living there. Maybe that's still true to some extent, but I think it's important that it's not the only truth. That there's other ways to do it too. So yeah, that's what I'm experimenting with a little bit. So far, it's been working. So I'm still not divorced. And
that's great.
Some kind of success there,
So we've got a concept in Canada that's hockey parents. So it's these people that really want their kids. I know, I'm getting in there. They really want their kids to be professional hockey players. Are you going to be like a CS:GO parent?
No. Yeah, people have actually asked me this, and I take it somewhat seriously. Like, I mean, I don't want to turn the whole show into a debate about sort of child development and stuff like that. But I think it
wouldn't be the first time, oddly.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's important not to push your kids into things that they don't want to do. Obviously, if he's going to be interested in Counter-Strike, then I will have more to offer. If he's going to be interested in football or something I don't know anything about, then it's going to be a different kind of challenge. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to push him in any one direction. I think that's bad. I've had friends who've had that done to them, and it's been rough for them.
Yeah,
so.
I definitely appreciate that approach. I'm not a parent myself, but I definitely did enjoy not being pushed into things by my parents, although I ended up doing exactly what they did, funny enough.
It's kind of weird though, because it feels like that's changed, Like, I think when I was younger, it was still kind of socially acceptable to be like, your child should do this.
Yeah.
And it feels like that sort of
seems so antiquated.
Half my family is like that. Like, not my direct family. My parents were incredibly supportive, which I was very, very lucky for.
Yeah.
But there's definitely other, like, I guess a lot more in my friends' circle, more than my direct family. But they did have, like, their goals lined up by their parents starting at 8 or 9, and just being like, nope, you've got to go into this and be this and be this, and this is where you're going to be at 25.
I mean, if the thing is, if you have the sort of child where that works, then to some extent fine, but you can't really know that until the kid is going to be older, right? So if you put down that plan from they were like 2 years old, and you're just going to follow through with it no matter what are you going to do by the time they're 14 and it's turned out it's not working? So, like, I mean, by all means have a plan or whatever. Like, I'm fine with that. It's not like you shouldn't just like let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some responsibility there to try and sort of make things go in a reasonable direction. But I've had friends in sort of childhood friends where their parents sort of had a plan, and that plan was never going to change. Like, the plan was the plan, and we're going to follow this plan, and you're going to end up in med school, or you're going to end up as a lawyer, and that is it. And they got really messed up after a while, because they weren't, if I would almost say if their parents knew them, they would know that their kids were never going to be doctors or lawyers, not because they weren't smarter, and it just wasn't them. So yeah, I guess just try and chill out a bit on that front. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I obviously I wish that I hope that he's going to be interested in esports, and that it's going to be something that I can share with him. But if not, then we'll find other things to share, and it'll be fine. So
it's
try and be chill about that.
It's interesting that we've sort of accidentally stumbled on this conversation, because what you're saying, sans the child development part, is sort of similar to what Semmler was saying about a work-life balance. But when we go back to, we had Sadakist, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago, he was kind of saying, I have no life out of CS:GO right now. I bought that car that I've never seen. It's sitting at home right now. And I used to have hobbies and I don't now. And it seems like, guys like you and Semmler, you've been doing this for a long time. You're the OGs sort of, and you seem to be at a spot where you feel a little bit more comfortable. You don't have to do every event.
Well, yeah, I think that is true, and the analogy to Sadokist is a really good one, because that's sort of what Semmler and I were doing in like 14, 15, even to some extent in 16. It's only really this year that it started to cool off a bit, you know. Now, the Sadokist in the car is really funny to me, because we've been mocking him about that car for a while now, because it's so hilarious that he ended up spending all this money on building this really good car. And he's actually a really good driver. I don't know if you'll know this, but I mean, if he had put his energy into that in life, you know, who knows if he could have been like a semi-pro or pro at that. But regardless, it's a passion of his, and he doesn't get to spend any time because he's traveling to all these esports events. But I mean, I think that's so if you wanted other things in your life outside of esports, that's why I said you need like the family structure. Like you need people to be willing to make sacrifices for you, right? I mean, I think that's even true with friendships, you know. I really have to plan. If I want to see my sort of real life friends, I have to plan it like part of a schedule. I have to say like, oh, okay, in 2 months I'm gonna have like 4 days off where I'm home, and you know, I'm going to need some time to relax, so maybe we can meet on like this one evening, then I will have time and we can meet, and that's it, you know. Because otherwise it's madness. And I mean, some of the sacrifices that I, you know, had to make to do some of this is now when I look back on it, even just like 2 years, like my son is 2 years and a bit now. When he was born was like 2 days before the Intel Extreme Masters in Katowice was.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, it wasn't Intel Extreme Masters. That was the major. That was when that tournament was a major tournament in Counter-Strike. It was a really big deal, you know, in 2015. And so we were still in the hospital, you know, and we just had a kid. And so we were there for 1 day, and then the day after I said, well, I'm going to Katowice, you know. I'm out, you know.
I'm out.
And yeah, and when I think about it now, I think, what the hell was I thinking, you know, like that is such a stupid choice to have made, you know. It really is, you know. Completely, but at the same time, I think I felt sort of in my bones that if I didn't make that choice, good chance that I would have been mentally gone anyway. Like I just couldn't see a world in which I wasn't going to go to the major, you know. And I don't know if I mean, I feel bad about it now, but yeah, that's and I mean, I had to have like a wife and a family that would say, that's okay, you know, like you do that and then you come home and then you know, we'll take care of things while you're gone. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
It's not easy. Definitely not easy.
That's a hell of a forked road right there.
Bringing some reality to all of our younger viewers and listeners.
They're
Just
just
I
like,
just get to go meet my friends whenever I want. It's like, no, listen, growing up, this is growing up.
This is adulting.
Yep.
To the next. This is adulting times 10.
Yeah.
Now, getting into some more of the nitty gritty CS:GO stuff. I know Kyle's eager to ask you some speculative questions, but I want to jump in and get my stuff answered first, if you don't mind, Kyle.
I'll allow it.
Yeah, I should be
I'm on the
asking
board,
Josh.
right? So yeah, you
Josh
gotta
is the
ask me.
controller.
Yeah.
One of the storylines going on in Counter-Strike right now that I, for some reason, have become somewhat invested in is that of Mousesports and sort of the post-Niko Mousesports. Obviously, you know, there's supposed to be a write-off. You know, everyone's telling me, oh, they're tier 3 now, like they're shit tier, like he was carrying them.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult to argue that statement. However, they seem to be punching above their weight to some extent. At DreamHack Tours, they had what I thought was quite a good performance and some really great stuff from their opper. I think his name is Shazam. What do you make of that team?
So sorry, which team do you want to talk
Mouse,
about?
sorry.
Mouse, yeah. All right. I mean, they've got some crazy stuff going on. I was on the same boat. I for sure thought that when Niko was going to leave that team, that's it. You know, that no more Mousesports. Some of their players seemed questionable at best, and they just seem like they've been struggling for such a long time. And the games that Mousesports would win would be ones that required Niko to drop, you know, 30, 40 plus kills, right?
Yes.
And he did that, and then, you know, even then sometimes it wasn't enough, and every once in a while it was enough, and everyone was happy. But so yeah, I thought when he was out that was going to be the end of it. But this actually, to my mind, it reveals an interesting story about how a team functions. You know, it seems to be the case that you can only have so many high functioning players in a team before they start taking up someone else's space. And I mean, there's obviously some sort of mathematical reason for that. You know, you can only get 5 kills per round unless you start counting teammates. I mean, so you know, if someone is going to get 40 kills across, you know, 20, 30 rounds, however many you end up playing, there's not going to be that much left to spread out sort of the rest of the team, right? So that's one side of it. But the other side of it is socially, the team dynamic can change a lot. And someone who, you know, maybe was once at a position where they didn't feel like they had the authority, or they just didn't feel good enough in the team that they could play, you know, to the level that they should, or play a little bit better or something, right? Suddenly someone leaves, the social dynamic changes. Not that it's anybody's fault really, but it just does. And then someone plays better, you know. I think that's possible. That's part of the explanation. That actually, some of the players, you know, got to play differently now that Niko wasn't there anymore, and it benefited them, you know, potentially. And then obviously Rob's joining, and he's like a young superstar talent, and is playing really well. That's obviously a big part of the explanation too.
Yeah, there's an old saying I like, which is "cometh the hour, cometh the man" kind of thing. So Niko leaves a vacuum. Also, I just want to apologize. I think I said Shazam is actually a Misfits player. Oscar is the opera from Mouse. You hit on something really interesting there when you said that there's only room in a team for so many players of a certain caliber. I feel like we're creeping into an era of super teams right now. You know, you could name a couple off the top of your head. And one of the teams that had a very poor performance at that same DreamHack Tours was Na'Vi, who, you know, many people consider them a super team. So do you think the idea of a super team is flawed?
I just think it's very, like, the amount of things that have to work out for a super team to work is really quite staggering if you try and sort of put it all together in your mind. So for one thing, there are very few players in the world that are sort of super at everything, you know. Yes, every once in a while you are going to get someone like, you know, a Niko who, like, even when Niko gets pushed into a corner and he has to pick up the AWP, he still hits those shots, right? Everyone remembers what Olofmeister, you know, was at the absolute top level. Shox is another player, right? You know, you get these different types, like Cold Sierra and Snacks, right? There's like a list of players in your mind that you know that they could do almost anything, you know. So, okay, cool. But most of the players, they have sort of certain frameworks that they like to play within. So if you find 5 players that all play within the exact same framework, then probably you're missing, you know, something else in the tactics or even on the map. You know, like, what if they don't like playing that position, or they all like playing the same position, just to put it sort of in the most simple terms, right? So you're gonna have to need 5 people who can cover different sort of, you know, different strengths in the game. But then socially, and I think this is the part that's incredibly unexplored in Counter-Strike, and it's a huge part of the game, and it's, to my mind, one of the most interesting things, and it's so hard to sort of peek inside this world, because for obvious reasons, you know, that if you're a teammate and you either get kicked or you leave or you kick someone else, you're not just going to go out and talk publicly and say, we didn't like him, he wasn't doing a very good job, or he made everyone else feel bad. You know, your instinct is to try and be reasonable and say that, you know, we're just going our different ways, and it's, you know, it's nobody's fault, right? So that it makes sense, but the problem is, it's really important, and I think to some extent the fans are sort of missing out on how interesting that is, and how deep the game becomes when you start to think about the social aspect, because it's really important, and it's one of the areas I think where the game can be optimized the most, which is what we're seeing out of some of the more professional organizations, like, you know, Astralis with their sports psychologist, and, you know, like, just the focus now on saying, we're really professionals, and we're really going to run this as, you know, a professional team, and we're really going to try and find out what works the best, even when we maybe don't have, like, everything fitting together perfectly. You know, we're still going to fight to be professional and all the rest of it. So yeah, I think for that reason, you know, you need to find 5 players that you can sign that are not under contract anywhere else. They all have to be socially sort of mixed, and they all have to be willing to play different roles. The likelihood that you can find that is just very, very low. I would say incredibly low. And then even then, how many players are superstar players for like a year? You know?
Yes.
almost nobody is. So if at the time you sign those 5 players, 3 months later, some of them are going to be in a slump, and then what's the point? I think the best example where that actually worked for, and I mean maybe still to some extent does, is like Phase Clan. That to my mind is still the stupidest experiment of all time, and it worked. And it's shocked. I'm still shocked that even the original sort of lineup of it worked. I think it's really cool because it shouldn't have. It really shouldn't have. If you put 5 players like that, like some of the original Phase lineups that had Michaelele and Scream or whatever, like you put some of those teams together, what really should happen is that only like 1 or 2 of them per game do well. It should never be the case that +3 do well, and that happened in some games. And those games are the weirdest games of all time, where you have like 4 or 5 players all hitting the A level. It's very hard to do that. Very hard.
Wow, that's actually a great point about the room to grow in Counter-Strike for the unquantifiable stat of team cohesion, because that is something that I don't hear talked about that much. You mentioned Astralis, for example. Do you think a team like that that is one of their secret weapons?
Yeah, I mean to some extent, but I would say at points it was about to be their undoing as well. They obviously had the core of Device and Dupree and Sipnix that had, I think, more than just the fact that they played well together. There was also a friendship element and something like that going on, right? Which was important. But then I think what really changed in that team, no matter who they were going to add, whether it was when they added Glaive instead of Carrigan or when they brought in Kiebu later on, no matter what the mix was going to be, there was a point where they decided it's not just that it's fun playing Counter-Strike for money. It's that we're professionals. We're athletes. And that's what matters. And competing and the competition itself is the art in what we're doing, and that's what we're going to care about. And all of the sacrifices that we have to make, and in terms of practicing many hours a day and all these things it all has to sort of serve this higher goal of the competition. And that is something that I'm sure they have not even gone through with that journey. I mean, maybe I'm even like romanticizing it a bit more than I should. But I think they started that journey, and I think many teams will have to go down the same route at some point, or many players will have to sort of find a way to get to that level, that sort of mentality, and it's stressful. I can understand why people resist it, but at the same time, I think that's where the esports world as a whole is going and will be going.
That's a really interesting way of discussing some of the things that Astralis has faced. I was actually recently interviewed Dupree, and I was reviewing some old AMAs, and he talked about how the team had stopped believing in Carrigan, in his calls at least, but they were still playing with him, right? So it was like, it's a situation where you're sort of like walking wounded, because you know that when the call comes down, you're not going to have 100% confidence in it, but he's still on your team, and you probably still love him, right? He's still your guy. It's just, right. It has to change.
And listen, you could see that when you saw them play. It was the most frustrating thing in the world, and this is where some level of unfairness almost can creep in. I think when you're talking about like that specific situation, because the minute you distrust your in-game leader, you can actually, it becomes sort of like what's the sort of logical term for it? Like confirmation bias, You almost develop sort of a level of confirmation bias in your playstyle, because if your leader says, go to B bomb side right now, just go explode onto the side. Like when I make that call as an in-game leader, I need that call to be heard instantaneously. Because if it's not, if someone says, oh, but I have a gut feeling that says I need to wait, 2 seconds or something, it's like then that could be the gap that's that makes it a bad call. And then it is a bad call, but only because you waited for 2 seconds. So then now, when you review that game in your head, you think, well, there were so many calls that, got us killed. And it's like, yeah, but maybe also because, you didn't trust the leader enough to sort of go through with it, right?
Yes.
And how do you pinpoint which of those is the right, which of those is the real world? It's really hard to do that from both sides, Like I said, this is part of why the game is so interesting, and we never get to discuss it ever. Certainly, never get to discuss it in any tournament or any like big show because it's so hard to sort of visualize, and it's even harder to get the teams to talk about it. But yeah, you can see where the problem occurs, right? So I'm really hesitant to blame Kerrigan for the shortcomings of that team when he was on it. But it's maybe also hard to who knows where the sort of ultimate truth lies in whose fault. And I think maybe the best way to look at it is to say collectively they lost touch with each other, and as a result it didn't work. It was never going to work.
Now that was a very complicated question and a very eloquent answer from you. So I quite appreciate that. Here's one that is a little bit more simple. Speaking of Astralis, we've got a big money run back match of the last E-League Major with VP and Astralis coming up in a month or so, a couple months. And who's going to win that? I'm just going to ask who's going to win. I'm just going to ask. Because I got my answer. But I want to know yours.
So who's gonna? So everyone, just let me preface that by saying, everyone was so angry that it was gonna be Virtus.pro playing in that match, right? Because they say, well, Virtus.pro, they've been so bad online and they haven't been playing well, and now they're just getting like a free ticket to go and play in this game where they play one game and potentially win 250,000. It just seems unfair,
Yeah.
So that got people really angry. I think people really heavily underestimate Virtus.pro when they say that. I think I almost got upset at some point when I was reading the comments. I thought this is madness, that if any team in Counter-Strike has proven just how consistent they are with sort of showing up and doing really well on LAN in general.
Yes.
If you take sort of the whole of their careers there, it's definitely Virtus.pro, and especially when they have time to prepare for this match and it's such a big match and everything. So to analyze who is going to win it, I think you have to look at who is doing a good job in general of, sort of doing research on the other teams, right? Because in this format, you don't have to think about anything else. You just have to think about that one game, that one opponent. You have all the time in the world to find all the demos and everything else you want. So it makes it much more difficult than just saying who's currently doing well. Like if you just look at it like who's currently doing well, that's a really simplistic sort of view on what that game is going to be like, in my opinion. So you asked for a specific.
Asked for the winner.
Yeah, I've tried to sort of make sure that I'm a bit safe in my answer.
Understandable.
It's really tricky. I'm still going to go with Astralis to win it.
Ooh, you did a little 180 there because it sounded like you were setting yourself up for a VP. See,
I know.
I reckon. Sorry, go on.
I only do that because I don't want people to. I think people are being unnecessarily sort of negative when it comes to VP's chances. I think it's going to be a really, really close game. So, yeah.
See, I think VP are actually going to take it because if you look at the past record of every time they've played, yes, okay, Astralis won in the clutch situation, right, the major, but VP have beaten them in recent times almost every other time. So I was feeling pretty good about myself there because I thought Anders was going to tell us that VP was going to win. And he was like, no, Astralis. Now, moving on from some big European stuff to some smaller NA news. I just wanted to get your thoughts, if any, on FNX moving away from Immortals, which we just learned about, I think, yesterday. And where we don't know where he's going to go. Where do you reckon he's headed?
I honestly don't know. I mean, the really weird thing is that there seems to be sort of some level of controversy surrounding it. I think everyone sort of. Valve did that whole feature on him for the major, like his history and how he came to play with Fallen and all the rest of it, and so there's like he's a player that has a lot of history with him going back to 1.6 and everything. So I think a lot of fans feel like they're tied to him in some way. Now it's so vague, the whole statement. They said he decided to sort of step down, and it's like, well, why? I mean, like. Is there a better Brazilian team? I mean, apart from the one that he was already on that he could go to, it doesn't seem very likely. So I don't know, man. It's one of those things where I would almost rather not speculate as to what is actually going on and just say that insofar, to me, the subtext seems to be that there is a problem that lies outside of how well he does in the game, you know? So that could be a motivational problem, or it could be a personal problem, it could be any number of things, and I would almost rather not speculate. All I can think is that that's a real shame, because he's a really good player, you know?
Absolutely.
So whatever the reason is, it's kind of a big loss, in my opinion, for Immortals, I would say, and I can't see an easy way for FNX to find a different team that he can just fit into.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit now, because we've been pretty heavy on the Counter-Strike now.
It is Anders.
Yeah. Obviously.
Actually,
no, I totally expect that.
Can I introduce one topic just before I forget about
please
Yeah,
do.
absolutely.
it? So, because now you brought up this 1v1 show match, and there's one thing that I'm really excited about, that because people are sort of saying, what a silly format, you know, 250,000 for one winner for one game, isn't that silly? But actually, from an esports point of view, it's actually a really interesting project to run, because you know, in other sports, like if it was, you know, like a football game, you would have, you know, a football match, and it would be scheduled for Sunday, and everyone would look forward to that one day, and you have one game, and that's it. You know, people buy the tickets for that one game, they go and watch that one game, and then that's sort of the format of it, right? Whereas in esports, a lot of the time you say, oh, I'm going to watch, you know, a tournament. Oh, I have to schedule, you know, 12 hours to watch this, you know, thing, right? Because it could be, oh, I'm going to watch 4 quarterfinals in one day, right? It's, you know, and each of them will last 3 hours. Like, people can do that, and for some miraculous reasons, esports fans do that, but it's super unreasonable to assume that can be a model that will last forever, right?
I love it. I love it, because I love this topic in and of itself. We talk about this a lot through like either burnout or oversaturation. Like this is one of my favorite things to talk about.
Ladies
in
and gentlemen, this is the voice of an adult talking.
Yeah, I know, right? I like this,
Well,
because go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, so if this works out well for Turner and E-League, and if people like it, then it opens up the possibility of sort of asking and saying, okay, well, what can we learn from that? That's really what I'm interested in. What can we learn from this kind of a project? So I think I think people forget about that side of it. You know, if it fails horribly, even that is good, because then we can sort of say, okay, well, why did it do that? What can it be improved? And if it's really good, then yeah, maybe we can take some of that with us.
I mean, I think that's the big thing for anybody, is right. It's just keep learning from all your experiences. But to go back to the kind of oversaturation point and expecting people to watch all these games. I mean, we work in esports. Like we're literally an esports media company. You obviously also work in esports all around CSGO. It is almost impossible for any single one of us to know what's going on at a super intimate level with every esport that's going on, right? Most people specialize in one or two. That's the same for most of our staff. Everybody's kind of got the ones that they're able to follow. But it's gotten to the point with a few of them, like CSGO, League of Legends, Dota, where there's just too much. It's almost impossible to stay up if you have a real person job. And again, I think we're all very fortunate to have a real person job that also is within something that we enjoy doing and that we like. It's almost a hobby job. But I mean, if I had to go and work at a bank or something like that, I'm not gonna, like, my 40 hours a week at work is not something I can use to keep up on esports anymore. So how the fuck do I do it? Like, how the fuck do I care about a team if I only get to see them play every like week or two and I don't even know when the hell it's happening?
Well, and even worse, right? Let's say your team is in that tournament that, you know, I think this is one of the really big problem areas, right? So there's a tournament. It's Counter-Strike or it's Dota, or it doesn't really matter, you know. You go to the international and you say, okay, my favorite team is going to be Newbie or something. I want to see Newbie play. Well, you don't know when they're playing. You don't know, like you have almost no way of sort of figuring out when to be in the arena, and it's all just like, it's very complicated, and it's the same for Counter-Strike. And even worse, what if you're under 18 and you have to sort of, you know, get your parents to take you there? What are you going to tell your parents? Hey, mom and dad, do you want to come join me for, you know, 72 hours of video game watching, you know, over the course of 4 days or something? It's like, that's a really hard proposal to sell, you know. And even then we managed to fill stadiums, you know. And that's kind of impressive, you know. But it's possible that there's a better format out there that you know, allows people to go and watch esports and then not have it consume, you know, 4 or 5 days where they have to, and I think someone should run those experiments, and until someone does, we're not going to find out, So I'm really curious about what it will do to sort of the business side of things, really.
Yeah, I mean,
that's ultimately what it is.
I think it's really interesting to look at this compared to traditional sports because people will talk about. I mean, the NFL has been going through kind of a rough couple of years maybe, and seeing some of the viewership drop off. And people have pointed a lot of the problems being how Sunday is set up, right? Like you're looking to ask an adult to give up essentially one full day of their 2 days of weekends to watch all the games. Except eSports is doing that, as we've said, 3-4 times a week. But we're also in that situation where eSports is exploding. It's getting much larger, but there's still not a big enough audience to fracture the audience into that many different team segments yet, like you can do with the NFL. We've got a couple big draws, and that's really what it is. So I'm not sure if this is something that can resolve itself by just growing our audience. I mean, basically that's waiting, or if there is a better way to go about it. And I agree with you. I think this will be really interesting to see how it works out. If just a one-off big punch can kind of pull in the viewership and really make it a little more sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, and I mean, so the other problem is, right, the audience is there, but they are also not willing to really pay for a lot of what's going on,
Yes.
It's not. It isn't much help that you can put 10,000 people in the stadium if each of the tickets that they purchase cost $10. Like that's not going to pay for what's going on, right? And there has to be some kind of negotiation between the audience and the tournament organizers or the publishers or whoever is in charge of the show, to sort of say, okay, how can we develop a product that you guys will come and watch for 1 or 2 days, but then the product is at a high enough level that it's really worth it to sort of enjoy and think about it. And it's worth it to pay, $100 or $200 or whatever normal sports ticket cost at the high end,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the amount of value that you get out of an esports ticket right now at a live event, it's incredible compared to, a hockey game or a soccer game or a football game.
Well, this is this whole conversation. I know you're dying to ask your question.
No, man, we're right into it. This is my zone now.
This whole conversation is approaching an overarching issue in esports that I'm always really interested in. It's just you mentioned that despite all these problems, there's still fans. Stadiums still have butts in the seats. It's sometimes I think, how are there fans of teams in esports? Counter-Strike has it a little easier because a lot of their teams identify with a geographical location, be it Poland, be it Denmark, be it Russia. But why would I be a fan of Astralis? Why would I be a fan of Heroic? I'm Canadian. I'm a 29-year-old Canadian man. I like watching good CS, but it's to hook me as a viewer, to get me buying merch, to get me buying tickets, to get me viewing that Twitch stream, possibly even paying for it, I got to be a fan of one team. But how does one become a fan if it's not geolocated?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at a slight handicap when it comes to regular sports because I almost watch none of it.
Okay.
But what I would say is, what it seems to me is that the people that I know who are interested in football or whatever else seem to take some pride in the history of that organization and
Yes.
If you're a fan of Liverpool or something, then what were the good players 25 years ago, and what is the club had to go through as a whole, to get to where it is now, and when were the glory days, and you obviously hope that they're going to come again, and there's that whole sort of thing and the whole collective part of it. That probably just takes time, doesn't it? It takes time to build that brand recognition and that feeling that it's there, and maybe it's just there just hasn't been time left. But the fact that doesn't really exist to the same level is a really big problem, right? Because as far as I can tell, there are sort of three or four different pillars of regular sports that people derive an income from, and one is definitely sort of fan merchandising, especially the clubs. I think that do it really well in football. They rely on the sales to fans basically for some part of it, right? Another one is obviously sponsorships, and the third one is media rights sales. The right to broadcast the match is going to be something that's negotiated for. So those three, I would say, in esports now, man, we hardly even have the sponsorship part of it down, and I think everyone is expecting that the media negotiation, the negotiation for rights to media and content, is going to be the next big thing. That's what everyone is sort of thinking that's coming next, right? But even the sponsorships are almost all endemic sponsors, which you always sound so smart when you get to say that. So I love saying
such
it.
a good word.
Endemic and non-endemic are two of the biggest buzzwords that get thrown around at any esports event.
Endemic synergy, Kyle.
Yeah,
which is weird because they have very defined meanings.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. It's like they mean, but people just want to say it.
It sounds like you're talking to someone who knows what they're talking about whenever that word gets popped.
I'm actually going to put this in my Twitter profile now.
Yeah, you should. You should.
Endemic
esports
esports
person.
Esports,
but yeah, I mean, it matters in the sense that that if you're generic hardware producer X and you're already sponsoring 10 different tournaments, right? When the 11th tournament show up, even if they have a good product, it's like you might not have enough budget left to use on esports. Like the esports budget is already used, so you obviously need outside brands to come in and do something. And people are working really hard on that, man. Like some of the people who work in the sales departments of all these big companies are working night and day to make this work, but it's not easy. It's it's a really big uphill battle.
There is a lot to unpack in that little chat. So I'm going to go to the media rights first, because I think we're starting to see more people actively searching for that answer now, right? I mean, you've got Riot selling the rights off to them for MLBAM, and basically being like, hey, we don't know how to monetize this. MLBAM, like, good luck. Hopefully you can figure out how to monetize this. You can pay us for the rights for it now, but good luck making the money on it. Because how are they going to monetize it? How is this company going to get people that, as you mentioned, aren't really willing to pay that much? I mean, they're not willing to pay much for the live experience. Everybody that's sitting on the computer is expecting to pay nothing, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
So how are you going to convince me to watch League of Legends and pay you for a subscription for that?
And people will pay for it because it's $50 million a year guaranteed to Riot.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
Like they have to. I mean, it's not going to be sustainable without that. There's been talk of putting like some of the CS:GO events on TV stations over in Europe. Obviously, there's like TBS doing their Turner stuff.
Yeah.
Is like I don't know. I think it's good to see a lot of different approaches, but I don't see anyone yet that has it figured out or anywhere near figured out. And I just don't know how to do it. I mean, I think there's just this massive problem of convincing people to pay, and I think the geolocation ties into that, and not having really what drives fan bases right now is wins. People follow, like there's bandwagoners in every sport, every game.
Yeah.
Except we haven't been in esports long enough. Like the teams generally haven't been around long enough to have anything that isn't a bandwagoner.
We have to get to that point.
Yeah.
If you're talking about people paying, like if I want to pay, for Krakow on pay-per-view, like one of my teams has to be a Krakow. Like, am I just going to pay to see good CS? I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up, right? I need to be a fan.
And if these guys are, I mean, double elimination maybe, but like if you're doing the tournament style now too, where you're only guaranteed to see like maybe 2 matches with your favorite team.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'll pay for a league where I'm guaranteed to be like, all right, I'm going to get 10 weeks of watching like Team X play.
Right.
Cool. I'm down for that. But to pay for like a major and be like, all right, I might get to see the group stages and then they're gone. Cool. Like, not really.
Yeah, so obviously as a commentator, my hope is that's part of the value that maybe we can add with the show that surrounds the game, that even if your favorite team is knocked out, or they happen to not be playing, when you tune in or whatever is going on, that the sort of surrounding product can still be good enough that people will be like, I actually will check this out because I kind of like this, That's I think a big part of the job that we have to lift collectively, between the talent and the analysts and the stage hosts and all the people that are sort of working on that side of it. That's really important because otherwise, you do get into this space where people just say, well, if FaZe kind of aren't playing, then I'm not watching, that's a big issue. But I think most of the big investors that invest into this world now know that that the conversion between the current audience and some future audience that will pay for the product in some way, or at least a future audience that can make them money, is that that part of the algorithm hasn't been found yet, and they're hoping that they can be part of the ones that help find it, and maybe they can because we talk about like paying for tickets and all that, but I mean, ad block is the other big issue.
Absolutely.
And in my opinion, it's sort of a self-created problem. It's a problem that the internet as a whole created for themselves, right? Because everyone remembers what ads were like in the 90s, and no one is going to ever go back and not use ad block. So, but then how do you reconcile the two things, right? And everyone is thinking, okay, if our viewership numbers say that we have 400 million hours every month that we sell in terms of esports, that's a lot of hours. If you can start converting those into something that sort of pays you money, that's why people are investing money into it. They're thinking this is going to be sick when it really works. The only problem is that last little part that says, okay, how, and when it happens, we'll know because those organizations will, shall we say, become almost sort of like black holes of power within esports. They will end up consuming a lot of the real estate that's out there right now, because who wouldn't want to work with them?
Yeah.
If they have the model to say, we can actually convert all the viewership right into profit.
Well, that's the thing. If you've got the key, everybody's going to bring you the lockbox, right?
Yeah.
So I think this leads exactly to where I wanted to talk about. So this is the last big topic that I'm going to broach for today. The culmination of all the things that we've been talking about are kind of culminating in the Overwatch League. You're talking about like major non-endemic sponsors. You're talking about geolocation for a lot of the teams. You're talking about broadcast rights. What the fuck is OWL, first of all? Because I don't think there's enough information out there to really talk about it. And like basically, let's just start. What are your thoughts on OWL as a product?
So I've tried to sort of search the information that I could and sort of keep an eye on it, as much as I could, obviously. I mean, so this seems to be, Blizzard's way of saying, all right, let us try and create the structure that may be lacking in other areas of esports, right? And which is not that dissimilar to what Riot have been doing, just sort of saying, well, we're going to control this product, right? Those are different philosophies, and you can tell that it's a publisher-driven thing, right? So Valve as a publisher they have two different products, and they run them very differently, right? They have a lot more control over Dota than they do over Counter-Strike. And Counter-Strike, they're sort of more like, let's see where this goes, and not that they don't care. I think that's the wrong interpretation, but they want to keep it more open, and then with Dota they want to keep a bit more control, and then they must be learning a lot about which of those two models is the most successful one. So good job on Valve for running the experiment, And now Blizzard have other experiences with esports. Obviously they know what worked and they know what didn't work with StarCraft, in my opinion. So then now they get to experiment with this sort of thing, right? But there's a central question that I don't know if anyone sort of worries. Well, I think people do worry about it, but I think it's maybe not talked about quite enough, which is let's say you create a game like Overwatch, right? And you spend however many hundreds of millions, developing the game. Okay, cool. That's one cost. Now, you want to make that cost back and more, obviously, because otherwise your shareholders or whatever are going to get angry eventually. Yeah. So how do you make that money back? Okay. Game sales, right? Well, how do you get people to buy the game? Okay, you have a reputation, you're Blizzard. You put it on Steam or some other platform where people buy it from. You buy television ads. You put it on, all the retailers out there that sell it. Well, why you maybe make an esports out of it? That's another way of advertising it for game sales. But in my opinion, that if you do that, what you're sort of indirectly implying is that esports is just a marketing tool, and that the competitive part of it is sort of, that it's not really its own thing, that it's just a means to derive game sales. And maybe it's because I consider myself sort of the esports world, but it feels a bit sort of cheap to me. So when Blizzard go and do this other thing, I'm thinking maybe this is their way of saying, actually, that's not the only thing that we care about. That actually there's another side of it that says we actually do want to develop this as like a real sport, and that could be interesting. Now, whether or not it's the right approach and whether it'll work and all those things are, I don't know, there are 100 different factors that probably determine the success of it. But I think the fundamental question of saying, do we treat it just as marketing, or do we treat it as sort of a sport, and then for the sake of for its own sake, like it is its own justification, because I mean, why do people play football? It's obviously a waste of time, except for the people who do it, and all the people who put all the time into it. For them, it's self-explanatory why they spend the time on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the fan base to run it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You can build a business around it, which is one thing. I mean, my concerns around the Overwatch League, I want to see esports grow as much as possible. I do want to make sure that it's kind of sustainable as much as possible as well. Like, the last thing we really want to see is to burn like a major kind of first wave of non-endemic, because I'm going to use that word.
Nice word,
thank you.
Kyle.
Non-endemic sponsors, because if we're, or not sponsors, but even just money, right? Like, you've seen a lot of money pour in from VCs and from traditional sports organizations into like North American League of Legends teams, into these Overwatch teams now. If you're asking for 2 or 3 or 5 million from what we've been hearing for some of these spots and not doing any revenue share, not showing that there's even an audience around Overwatch yet, like none of the numbers that you've seen for tournaments have blown anything out of the water, right? Are we going to, not we, is Blizzard going to burn the first foot that a lot of these organizations put in the esports water? And is that going to hurt us in the long run?
Well, I mean, so much of this is speculation, right? Like, nobody knows exactly what's been happening, but one of the rumors that was going around for a while was that Blizzard had essentially guaranteed that those that like the people who bought into it would get some level of profit back,
Yeah.
So to the extent that that's true, and I honestly don't know, like I'm completely in the dark on this topic, so I wish I had some cool insight.
No, it's okay. We're pure speculation here. Let's go on
that. That would make it a better show. But yeah, so to the extent that's true, again, you could see. So let's say Blizzard burn $50 million of their own money on paying teams to say, listen, this is essentially a risk-free investment for you, but we want you to invest into this. And if it's successful, we all make money. If it's not successful, we will recoup your losses, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds like a lot of money, but it isn't to Blizzard. Like, I mean, it's in, if you think about the income that they have even still now for something like World of Warcraft, right? I mean, sure, losing 50 million is bad and everything, but it's like, as a marketing scheme, maybe it's worth it, and again, I would say even more in terms of the experience that you as a company get to figure out what works and what doesn't. That experience can be really valuable, because what happens 10 years down the line when esports is probably at an even higher level, even just generationally speaking, right? You have another 2 generations that are deep into esports, and that's all they care about and all they worry about. Like, the viewership is going to grow just based on the fact that most people over 35 don't even really watch esports because that's not part of their upbringing,
Yeah, and our youth is growing up right now on YouTube and on Twitch and on stuff instead. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's, if you're obviously gonna make mistakes in the beginning, and we are still in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. So it's better to make them now when you have different products, you could try different things. And Blizzard are in a great position in that sense because they actually have a lot of products, right? Like, Riot have League of Legends, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I would not be surprised if Riot try and develop another product soon, because another product would allow you to have another experiment, right? Valve have Dota and Counter-Strike is the 2 big things. It's a shame, in my opinion, that they never made more out of Team Fortress 2, because they would have had more experience running, a different kind of experiment than that. That I actually don't think Team Fortress would have made a good esports product, but the information you could have got out of it would have still been, worth it.
Yeah, there's still useful tidbits in there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's important 10 years down the line, because if you make the mistakes in 10 years, it's going to cost you way more than $20 or $50 million, way more.
Absolutely.
Thinking about the future, it doesn't sound very esports to me.
Well, see, I think that's a lot of people in esports. I mean, when we're talking about where it's tangentially been part of the mainstream, it hasn't even been really nowhere near a decade yet. Obviously, there's been competitive scenes around games for longer than that, but in the general, I guess more mainstream viewer base, it's still so young and so nascent that there's still just so much that we need to learn and to do stuff. And I think Anders touched on it a few times. And as long as everybody in the space kind of has that mindset and is looking for that quick cash out. What there absolutely is, there's like tons of people. Anytime you get a new industry, there's hundreds and hundreds of people that are trying to figure out how do I make the most money as quick as possible and just like GTFO without really caring. But as long as the major players have that longer time frame in mind, then it will still be okay.
But Kyle, endemics, ergo, synergistically, bandwidth.
Just stop.
Yeah, all right.
Just stop.
That
But
was
all right, Colin.
It was that's a really interesting discussion about the get money and get out thing, because we actually saw the Dallas Cowboys last year say, we've been looking at esports, but we don't think we can make money right now. We don't think we can make money with the current situation. And so it seems like if you are in it to make some quick money and get out, might want to look at bonds.
And you know what? I think that's a really good point too, because we're talking about these spots in OWL being very expensive, right? If it's like 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, that's nothing.
Well,
if
there was
you're
a
dealing
report
with
last week that was 20.
That's what I've heard for the LA spot. I don't know if that's actually across all cities, but
I think it was as high as 20. Was
So those numbers are big to me. I mean, I wish I had 5 million to plump down on a team. I wouldn't, but I wish I had it. But it's not when you're an organization the size of like the Golden State Warriors or the Miami Heat or anything like that, right? These guys are dealing, that's a rounding error. So for them to not take a risk and just wait another 5 years until the scene is more developed, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like even if it doubles their cost, they didn't have to waste 5 years of time on something. They can essentially just watch the learnings come out of it, learn what they can, and then get into it when they feel like it's either more profitable or that they're more ready for it.
Yeah, and I mean, as long as you're waiting anyway, you can just sort of keep an eye on what lessons everyone else is learning.
Yeah, exactly.
You let the other people make the mistakes, and then
learn by proxy.
Once it's a real thing, you say, okay, well now we're into. You're going to pay a bit more at that point, but so what? And yeah, I mean that's I don't think that's an unreasonable way to think about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, so in terms of sort of thinking long term for some of the existing organizations, right? That's even that I would say is a topic that's kind of, shall we say, it's still up in the air how that's going to work out, because a lot of these things are like sort of sub elements of much bigger wars between much bigger companies, you know. Mm-hmm. Obviously there's YouTube and well there's like YouTube and Twitch, but that's really sort of Google versus Amazon, mm-hmm. Which is an industry war that's been going on for quite a while, Then for one of the big tournament organizers, which is ESL, right? They got bought up by MTG that own sort of media rights all over the place, Mm-hmm. All of these companies eventually are going to have shareholders that are going to look at the reports and say, how is this actually working out, right? Mm-hmm. So there is also a risk in which you say, so let's say you're one of these big companies and you're the first to discover something that converts whatever it is you're doing into more money or into like a sustainable model. But there's no guarantee that first discovery or model will be like the best one. It could mm-hmm. just be the first one that you find. And so what happens if some of these sort of bigger companies suddenly say, oh, now we have the answer and we just go all in on that and it doesn't work. Like I think we're at a point where I think the esports world is like so big and there's so much talk about it that I don't think the whole thing would collapse, but I wouldn't rule it out that we could still see some pretty big collapses in the future just because it just isn't that well established yet, and that will be that. I think that could be part of it still. Even if it all seems like so glorious and everything now, I think people should still be sort of aware that could happen, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't rest on your laurels yet. It's still,
Man, whew. These are some heavy topics, man. This is getting real.
Yeah. We haven't even got to the politics yet, have we?
Yeah, I know. We still got to get. See, we started with the children, family, and esports, and we're gonna wrap up with the fireball that is global politics.
Well, I was hoping to wrap up with a slightly lighter topic, maybe something to end the show.
I'll allow
a little
it.
air. Oh, thank you, Josh.
Yes, no problem.
I was just gonna ask Anders, if you had to pick a casting buddy whose name isn't Semmler for the rest of your days, who would it be?
The rest of your days, so you're getting cast or married.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
But no annulments or divorces. Yeah,
this is like old timey feudal.
This is Catholic casting, Catholic, 13th century.
Oh, that's definitely rough. One person. It'd be great if I knew someone who had like multiple personalities. I mean, I could,
not get bored of them.
maybe like a little package there. I mean, if I choose metas, it's close to like just partnering up with myself. And it's really funny because metas, I have so many things in common apart from just at a glance appearance. Yeah, so maybe either him or maybe Moses, I think, could be another good choice.
Interesting.
Moses can put up with a lot of shit in general, which is a quality that's heavily underestimated in the esports world.
I agree.
Moses is one of the few people I know that seems to sort of make it through relatively sane, in spite of everything that we throw at him. He seems to sort of stay sane over time, which is pretty cool. So that's a good bet for something like that. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, not a bad answer. You did kind of say two people, but it's a good answer. It's a good answer. Before we do call it a day, is there anything that you want to say you didn't get a chance to? Any shout outs you want to do?
Any shout outs that I want to do, anything I didn't get a chance to? I guess one topic that I thought about maybe talking about. We ended up talking about so many other things, so it doesn't really matter. But so one of the things that I have tried to sort of add to my life, because what I was in a situation very much where I felt like I was doing all these events, and I was trading, shall we say, with all these different companies, and sort of okay, I'm going to this event, and then flying right from that event to the next event, and trying to figure this all out, and I realized that almost none of my life was just up to me. It was always like dependent on who wanted to hire me, or what my schedule looked like, and all these other things. So that's why I introduced this sort of streaming element that I've been doing a little bit over on Twitch, right? And that's something that I found to be quite enjoyable, and I think it's like, for me, that's become part of like trying to bring some stability to my life, to say that okay, I have this little niche where I control what happens, and even more importantly, I can actually communicate with the audience again, because this is something that you lose in the big tournaments. And I'm not saying that the big tournaments are bad or anything, but it's just that there's in the conversion from casting from your bedroom to going to a big arena, the one thing you can't bring with you is the Twitch chat, as stupid as it may be. There's something about, I would say there's something about esports and something about this whole world that is a bit forgotten in that, and I wanted some of that back. And I think the streaming thing is something that's been fun for me to do. So I guess if I had to sort of put it in, it's like a cautionary tale for anyone who's out there. That it's as much fun as it is traveling 200 days a year, or whatever you end up doing. It can be worth it to have like some of the focus in your life too, and I've been doing that a little bit, and yeah, I guess that's something that I just wanted to highlight. Yeah,
I like that you mentioned Twitch chat, because I think it's one of those things that a lot of people from the surface kind of sweep under the rug when they see it as just like, oh wow, that's Twitch chat, like that's spam, full of bullshit, whatever. But it seems to be one of those things that everybody that uses Twitch, like they actually place a fair amount of value on it, whether it just makes them feel like part of a community, like people just wanting their different emoticons and stuff in there. Like it's.
I must confess, I'm one of the people who the literal first thing that I do
minimize Twitch chat.
I close that chat.
I want it off my screen as well. But I'm also an old man, so
so am I.
Yeah. I actually like it, and I'm older than both of you. But I like it. I like it because when something happens and my first thought is like ruined, I want to go to Twitch chat. I want to see if other people also agree
you have that
ruined.
Confirmation bias.
Your soul is like a meme, though.
Yeah,
you are one with the Twitch chat.
I'm a meme golem. I don't know.
It's really weird, isn't it? Because obviously, especially for big tournaments, if there's 100,000 people watching, it's not like you're going to be able to single out any one comment and say, oh, that guy had like an interesting point or something, because it's just like scrolling text,
Yeah.
But there's still, it's like that scrolling text has like some sort of meta level that you still get a sense out of what's going on, from it. And I think that's not been investigated well enough why that is and how that works. And I mean, I've done a lot of thinking lately about if it's possible to actually bring that into a tournament,
So I feel like there's a sociology PhD student out there looking for something to write their thesis on.
I'm pitching a story. I'm pitching a story on this
chat,
later.
the scrolling Twitch chat is like the Matrix code, right? At first it looks like nothing,
The Matrix
and you look
social
at
code,
it long enough, and it becomes something.
Exactly.
So, Anders, you mentioned your streaming project. What is your Twitch streaming platform? What's the address?
Twitch.tv/Anders, which is really easy.
Oh, gee. Okay.
Remember.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's pretty simple. So, all the users out there, go check it out. Twitch.tv/Anders. Heard it from the man himself. Anders, it was a real pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, anytime. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
It was our pleasure.
Yeah, as always, we'll go around the room and make sure everybody can do the little shout. Make sure you want to follow us on Twitter and anything else. Just if you want to get more thoughts and random shit that all of us say. Josh, why don't you give yours?
Oh, my Twitter? Okay, it's twitter.com/thronegauntlet, and I mostly tweet about memes, and I also tweet about... I subtweet a lot. So if you like subtweets, check me out.
Conversely, I am at McNeil Collin on Twitter. I don't subtweet at all, but you'll get a lot of Power Rangers. So,
Yeah, I'm at KaiChat, which is just short for my name. I don't really tweet that much, actually. I just subtweet Colin. So
you're bad at tweeting.
yeah, but yeah, we talk about a lot of different esports stuff. Please get at us if you have any comments about the show, anything you'd like to see changed, or basically we just want some feedback from you guys.
Want me
and
fired,
hear what you like. So yeah, Colin. Other than that, it's all you.
Okay, guys. Well, this has been the Score Esports podcast with Anders. Remember, every Monday at 1 p.m. we do this. Although it is Tuesday, as I say that, funny enough.
At 2:30.
At 2:30. Generally speaking, on Tuesday, we also have the League of Legends specific podcast, which is called The Nexus. You can catch Josh Burry on that one, or cash him outside, whichever may be the case.
You can't catch me outside. I'm in Toronto.
For Josh, for Kyle, I am Colin, saying until next time, GG.
Later.
Got that smooth, sensual music
I liked it.
as the outro.
This is the good outro. Like Ryan throws in really heavy beats all the time, and it's like we got to get amped up again.
I'm
Whereas
gonna
I'm
turn
just
it up a little bit.
I'm just like good to go.
If you're still listening to this, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Just enjoy it. Just
We're all feeling it. All right.
I'm gonna go to sleep.
We could turn the lights down a little bit here, guys.
Yeah, we could. Where's that booze? Where's that?
Oh
yeah, Can you break out the bourbon? Like we're off Twitch now, so
yeah, I got it right here.
Yeah, I forgot Twitch's puritanical rules on that kind of stuff.
Absolutely no enjoyment while you're on stream.
No kidding.
Is Anders still on?
I have them.
Oh, okay. Are we? Wait. We'll start on next week's.